The dining room looked perfect. The table was set with fancy plates, tall wine glasses, and silverware that sparkled under the chandelier. Elaine had worked hard to make everything just right. It was her and Greg's 20th wedding anniversary, and even though things hadn't felt right between them for a while, she still hoped the dinner might bring them closer. Elaine wore a dress Greg used to say he liked. Her smile was soft but a little nervous. Across the table, Greg sat with a serious face, not saying much. Their daughter Lily sat quietly, watching everyone. Brandon, their son, had come home from college and brought his girlfriend. He was laughing, trying to keep the mood light. Elaine stood up with her glass in hand. "To family," she said, "and to 20 years of—" Greg suddenly stood up too. "Hold on," he said. Everyone stopped and looked at him. Greg reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a white envelope. He slid it across the table toward Elaine, past the flowers and food. Elaine looked confused. "What's this?" Greg looked her in the eye. His voice was flat. "It's over, Elaine. It has been for a long time. Let's stop pretending." Elaine slowly opened the envelope. Her hands shook as she read the first few words. "Divorce papers." The room went silent. Lily dropped her fork. Brandon just stared. Elaine felt like the floor had disappeared under her. Her face turned pale, and her heart raced. But she kept her back straight. She looked at Greg. "You're doing this now, in front of the kids." Greg didn't say sorry. He just said, "It had to happen." Elaine couldn't believe it. After everything they'd been through, he chose this moment. She looked at her children. Brandon looked down. Lily didn't take her eyes off her mother. Elaine sat down slowly. She placed the envelope on the table next to her wine glass. Her world was falling apart, but she didn't let it show. After a moment of silence, she spoke, her voice low. "Pass the potatoes." No one moved. Elaine Carter had once been full of dreams. She wanted to become a lawyer, maybe even open her own practice one day. But when she got pregnant with Brandon during her last year of college, everything changed. She chose to stay home and raise their children so Greg could finish law school and build his career. At first, it felt like teamwork. They were building something together. She believed her time would come later, but later never came. Year after year, Greg rose through the ranks at his law firm. He became well known, respected, admired. Elaine stayed behind the scenes, packing lunches, helping with homework, managing the house, and making sure everything ran smoothly. She didn't complain, not out loud. She believed in sacrifice and loyalty. She believed in marriage. But lately, Elaine felt like a ghost in her own home. Greg barely spoke to her unless it was about bills or schedules. He came home late, smelling faintly of perfume she didn't wear, always with the same excuse. Work ran late. He guarded his phone like it held national secrets. And though he never said it, Elaine could feel it. He had checked out of the marriage a long time ago. She had tried. She planned weekend trips, date nights, even couples counseling. Greg always had a reason to say no. She began to feel small, as if the years of her life were fading behind her, unnoticed and unappreciated. At the same time, Elaine and Lily had grown closer. 17 and wise beyond her years, Lily saw more than people gave her credit for. She noticed the tension in the house, the way her father ignored her mother, the way Elaine pretended everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. Lily stayed quiet, but she was always watching. What Lily knew, but hadn't told anyone yet, was something that kept her up at night. One evening, she had accidentally picked up her dad's phone when it buzzed, thinking it was hers. She saw a message, just one. It said, "She has no idea. Soon." It was from Elaine's best friend, Sandra. Lily didn't want to believe it. Not only was her father possibly having an affair, but with the one woman her mother trusted more than anyone. She didn't know how to tell her mum. The truth felt too heavy, too cruel, but it sat in her chest like a stone. Brandon, on the other hand, lived in a different world. At 22, he was everything Greg wanted him to be. Confident, driven, smart. Greg bragged about him constantly. Brandon soaked it in. He had always looked up to his dad and had learned to speak about his mom the way Greg did, with dismissal, as if she was just someone who cooked and worried too much. When Elaine reminded Brandon to call more often or asked about his classes, he would roll his eyes. "I'm busy, Mom." He didn't mean to be cruel, but he didn't see her. Not really. In his eyes, she was stuck in the past, nagging, emotional, not ambitious like his dad. The truth was, Greg had always been charming in public. People loved him. He told stories well, remembered names, and smiled at the right moments. At parties and work events, He introduced Elaine as his beautiful wife and wrapped his arm around her like everything was perfect. But at home, he barely looked at her. She had become part of the furniture, there, dependable, but unnoticed. Elaine felt like she had given her life to a man who no longer saw her. And now, with divorce papers on the table, she realized she might lose everything she had built. Not just her marriage, but her sense of self. Who would she be without Greg? Where would she go? How would she afford to live if everything was in his name? She had no job, no savings of her own. She had spent her life supporting Greg, trusting that he would take care of her. Now she feared she would be left with nothing. But even worse than losing her home or her marriage was the feeling of being alone, truly alone. The thought of waking up one day in a quiet house, no family dinners, no shared laughs or even arguments, it scared her. She wasn't ready to be forgotten. Yet a small part of her, deep down, also felt angry. Angry at how easily Greg had dismissed her. Angry at Brandon's coldness. Angry at herself for giving so much and asking for so little in return. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing. If she was going to survive this, she would have to find herself again, and maybe, for the first time in a long time, fight for her own life. Elaine stood at the kitchen sink, gripping the edge of the counter with both hands. Her eyes were blank, staring out the dark window where her reflection looked like a stranger. The sound of the dishwasher humming was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her heart felt like it had dropped somewhere into her stomach. 20 years, gone with a single envelope and one sentence. She didn't even hear Lily come in until she felt her daughter's arms wrapped gently around her waist. "I'm sorry, Mom," Lily whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Elaine didn't say anything. She just nodded and patted Lily's hand. She didn't trust her voice yet. She was trying not to fall apart. Brandon walked in a few minutes later, his voice sharp. "What was that, Mom? You just sat there. You didn't even try to talk to him." Elaine turned slowly. "What was I supposed to say, Brandon? Your father served me divorce papers in front of the whole family." Brandon folded his arms. "Maybe you should have seen this coming. He hasn't been happy for a long time." Elaine's face hardened. "I haven't been happy either, but I didn't throw away this family." Brandon shrugged. "He deserves to be happy too." Lily stepped forward. "Bran, don't do that. You don't know everything." "Yeah? I know Mum always made things a big deal. Maybe Dad just got tired of it." Elaine felt her throat tighten, but she wouldn't cry in front of her son. "You think I wanted this, Brandon? I gave everything to this family. Your father built his life on top of my sacrifices." Brandon shook his head and walked out without another word. That night, after the house had quieted, Elaine stood outside Greg's study door. She didn't knock, just opened it and walked in. Greg was pouring himself a drink. "I deserve to know," she said calmly. "Is there someone else?" Greg didn't flinch. He sipped his whiskey. "Yes." There is Elaine's voice cracked. "Is it someone at work?" He turned slightly, not meeting her eyes. He said nothing. His silence said everything. Elaine swallowed hard. "You coward." Greg finally looked up. "I'm done living a lie, Elaine. She sees me. That's more than I can say for you." Elaine laughed bitterly. "I saw you every damn day. I saw the parts no one else wanted. I held you up while you became him. And now you're walking away with her?" Greg didn't answer. Elaine turned and walked out, the weight of his betrayal pressing down on her like a stone. Later that night, Lily crept down the hallway, unable to sleep. She passed Greg's study and heard his voice, low and careful, like he didn't want anyone to hear. Curious, she pressed her ear to the door. "She didn't take it well," Greg was saying. "No, I didn't tell her it was you. Not yet. I'm trying to keep things clean. She's already falling apart." A pause, then Sandra's voice, faint but clear. "She'll never forgive me." Greg chuckled softly. "She'll get over it. You're not just anyone, Sandra. You understand me." Lily's stomach turned. Her hand shook as she pulled out her phone and hit record. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her own godmother, her mother's best friend. When the call ended, Lily tiptoed back to her room and sat on her bed, phone in hand, heart pounding. She replayed the audio just to be sure. It was real. It was true. She looked at the door, thinking about her mom down the hall, probably awake, hurting, trying to keep herself from shattering. Would this break her completely? Lily held the phone close to her chest. She wanted to protect her mum, but she didn't know if this truth would help her or destroy her, so she did the only thing she could for now. She saved the audio and waited. Alone in her room, Elaine sat on the edge of her bed, holding a pillow to her chest. The silence around her felt heavy. She had held herself together all evening, But now the tears came fast. She cried so hard she couldn't breathe. Her chest hurt, her eyes burned and her hands trembled. What did I do wrong? She thought over and over again. She walked to her dresser, opened the bottom drawer and pulled out an old photo album. Inside were pictures of her and Greg from years ago. College parties, their wedding day, Brandon as a baby. A flash of memory hit her. She was 22, sitting in a law school classroom, taking notes while pregnant. She had big dreams. She was going to be a lawyer too, just like Greg. But when Brandon was born, she dropped out. Someone had to stay home. Greg said he'd work hard and take care of the future. Elaine agreed, thinking they were a team. Now, she felt like she had been left behind while he climbed to the top without her. The next day, Brandon knocked on her bedroom door. She let him in, hoping maybe he'd changed his mind after last night. But he looked cold, distant. "Mum, I know this is hard," he said, "but maybe it's for the best." Elaine's face tightened. "For the best? Your father blindsided me with divorce papers at our anniversary dinner." Brandon sighed. "You've been too emotional lately. Maybe Dad just wanted peace." Elaine blinked. "Peace? Look," Brandon said, "you should accept it and try to move on. Fighting this won't help anyone." Elaine stared at him, her own son, talking to her like she was the problem. She turned away before he could see the tears welling again. Later that week, Elaine went to a lawyer. She needed to understand what she was up against, but what she learned crushed her even more. "Most of the assets are in your husband's name," the lawyer said gently. "The house, the savings, even the car titles. He's been moving money slowly over the last year. It's going to be hard to claim much unless you can prove financial manipulation." Elaine sat still, stunned. "I gave him my whole life. I trusted him." The lawyer nodded, but his eyes showed pity. Elaine left the office shaking. Not only had she lost her husband, but now it seemed like she might lose her home too. Desperate for comfort, she drove to Sandra's house. Sandra had been her best friend since college. She had always been there when Elaine needed to talk. When Sandra opened the door, she looked surprised, but hugged her warmly. Elaine poured out everything: the dinner, the divorce, how broken she felt. Sandra nodded, hugged her again, and said, "I'm so sorry, Elaine. You didn't deserve this. Greg's making a mistake." But every time Elaine mentioned the possibility of another woman, Sandra gently changed the subject. "We don't know for sure," she said. "You don't want to drive yourself crazy with guesses." Elaine didn't notice the fear in Sandra's eyes, or the way her hands trembled when she poured the tea. Back home, Lily watched her mother crumble a little more every day. She saw how Elaine moved slower, ate less, stared off into space. She heard her crying behind closed doors. It broke Lily's heart. She knew she couldn't wait any longer. Her mom needed the truth. So when Greg texted them all about having a family meeting to discuss the divorce plan, Lily had an idea. "Can we do it over dinner?" she asked. "Same as last time?" Greg agreed, confident, smug even. "Sure," he said. "Let's all be civil this time." But Lily wasn't planning a quiet dinner. She was planning a reveal. Everyone was tense at the dinner table. The room was quiet, the air heavy, like before a storm. The plates were full, but no one was eating. The second family dinner felt nothing like a family at all. Greg sat at the head of the table, just like he had the night he handed Elaine the divorce papers. He straightened his tie, cleared his throat, and began to speak in a calm, practiced tone. "I've spoken to my lawyer. We'll keep things civil. Elaine, the house can be sold and the money split. I've made arrangements to continue supporting Lily until she graduates. You'll have a few months to figure out where you want to go. I'm willing to give you the car." He spoke like it was a business meeting. Every word was cold and planned, like a script. Elaine didn't say a word. She sat still, her hands folded in her lap. Brandon watched his father closely, nodding now and then. Lily looked down at her lap, her hands shaking slightly. Greg continued, "We can avoid court if we both agree on the terms. I just want this to be done peacefully." Lily suddenly looked up. "Before we move forward," she said, her voice soft but firm, "Mom deserves to hear everything. All of it." Greg paused. "Lily, now's not—" She stood, her hand shaking as she pulled out her phone. "I asked you to tell the truth. You didn't. So I will." She tapped the screen and held the phone out. The room went quiet. Then, the audio started to play. Greg's voice. "She didn't take it well. Sandra. She'll never forgive me. Greg. She's always been a burden. She made herself small and expected me to save her." Laughter. Sandra again. "She'll break quietly. That's what she does." Elaine's face froze. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came. Brandon leaned forward, confused. Greg's eyes widened as he reached across the table. "Turn that off," he snapped, trying to grab the phone. Lily pulled it back. "I wanted it to come from you. You had your chance." Greg stood up, looking furious. "You don't understand what you've done." "No," Lily said, voice rising. "You don't understand what you did. To Mom. To this family." Elaine slowly rose from her seat. Her hands were no longer shaking. Her voice was steady. "You could have just left, Greg. Quietly. With some respect." She looked him in the eye. "But you chose to humiliate me. To lie. To cheat. To turn the one friend I had against me." Greg opened his mouth, but no sound came. Elaine turned to Brandon. "And you treated me like I was nothing. Like I imagined it all. Do you hear it now? Is this what I deserved?" Brandon looked away, ashamed. Elaine took her phone, opened her contacts, and hit a few buttons. She sent the audio to the family group chat, to her sister, to their mutual friends. Greg's face went pale. "Elaine, stop. It's done," she said. "Now everyone sees who you really are." She walked out of the dining room. Lily followed behind her, holding her hand. Sandra's betrayal hit Elaine harder than even Greg's did. Sandra had held her hand during labor. She had comforted her during her father's funeral. They shared secrets, memories, birthdays, and the whole time, Sandra had been sleeping with her husband, laughing behind her back. But Elaine wasn't going to break quietly. Not this time. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stood tall, walked into the living room, and picked up the framed photo of her wedding day. She stared at it for a moment, then calmly placed it face down on the table. Behind her, Greg was still shouting, trying to clean up the mess. Brandon sat in silence, finally seeing the truth. Lily stood beside her mother, proud and unafraid. Elaine took a deep breath. She had been pushed down, betrayed and broken, but now she was done being quiet. Elaine packed her last box and looked around the now empty bedroom. The house she had spent 2 decades in no longer felt like home. She didn't cry this time. She just closed the door behind her and walked away. Her new place was a small apartment above a coffee shop. The furniture was second-hand. The walls were bare, but it was hers. For the first time in years, the quiet around her felt calm, not cold. She lit a candle, made tea, and sat by the window watching people pass by. No one needed anything from her. No one was shouting or judging. She could just breathe. A week later, Elaine walked into a community center for a meeting. A flyer had caught her eye. Women's Legal Support Circle for those rebuilding. She sat in a circle of strangers, all with stories like hers. Divorce, betrayal, fresh starts. They didn't talk about being victims. They talked about moving forward. That night, she filled out the online form to reapply to law school. She had stopped for her family. Now, she was doing it for herself. Meanwhile, things weren't going so well for Greg. His law firm found out about the affair. Not just the scandal, but that it was with Sandra, the wife of one of their clients. It raised ethical red flags. The partners weren't impressed. Whispers started spreading. Clients began to leave. Brandon visited Elaine one afternoon, unsure of what to say. His voice was softer now, less certain. "I didn't know, Mom," he said, sitting at the small kitchen table. "I thought you were being dramatic. I didn't want to believe Dad could be that kind of person." Elaine nodded. "You saw what you wanted to see. But it's okay. You're here now." Brandon helped her fix the wobbly table leg. Before he left, he hugged her. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Lily, now closer to her mother than ever, came over often. They cooked together, trying new recipes and burning half of them. They danced in the kitchen to old R&B songs. They laughed more. Lily helped Elaine pick out clothes for her first day of class and even quizzed her on case law. "You're kind of a badass," Lily said one night. Elaine smiled. "I'm just remembering who I was before I forgot." She still had hard days, nights when she missed what her life used to be. But each morning, she woke up with more strength. She wasn't just someone's wife, someone's mom. She was Elaine, and she was coming back to life.